Hello and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pierce. This is a Ukraine War Update extra video, giving you the extra nuggets of information to get your teeth into to give you an understanding of this war, greater understanding. I'm going to start today with some sort of pretty horrible news, sad news, and actually something I predicted yesterday. So yesterday, a bunch of submarines and ships, I reported them leaving the ports in the Russian port in the Black Sea, and said we're probably looking at a cruise missile attack or some kind of missile attack coming over the next few days. Well, today that has actually followed. Seems interesting that I don't know. It's early days yet, but it seems that it's predominantly ballistic missiles, and these are missiles that are much harder to shoot down. So ballistic missiles have a trajectory that uses physics, right? You fire them up, you kind of point the system where you want the missile to go, and you get the right kind of angle, and there's maybe a little bit of guidance on board maybe of the missile, but broadly speaking, you're gonna point it in the right direction, fire it, and hope it lands in exactly the right place. The accuracy is going to be less than a cruise missile that you can guide while it's in the air. But with ballistic missiles, for some reason, I'm trying to look into this, but they are harder to shoot down than cruise missiles. And so the air defense systems in Ukraine at the moment are not sufficient to shoot down ballistic missiles. So it looks like Russia realizes this and has changed from using cruise missiles to using ballistic missiles. Perhaps they have more of them as well. We've seen a lot of missiles head towards Kyiv, Vinnytsia, which is just over here, and Dnipro, and it's pretty terrible stuff, to be honest. You've got here's an example. This is in Dnipro. You've got an awful lot of civilian buildings being hit, and it's just not good, not good at all. So I'm speaking over that, but you've got screaming. You've got literal screaming in the background there. This is, in the middle of some residential area, residential buildings in Dnipro, and there's absolutely no doubt about this. This is a war crime. If you're pro-Russian, like I'm pretty angry now, but like if you're pro-Russian and you're sitting in these threads going, yeah, but this is just BS. Oh, your maps are like, this is just propaganda for Ukraine, right? If you're sitting in whatever seat you're sitting in, whether it's in a bot factory in Moscow, or whether it's in some, I don't know, house basement in Serbia, or whether it's in whatever country in the world, right? Ask yourself, are you on the right side of this moral debate? If you are pro bombing residential cities like this, and think that Ukraine's done anything remotely parallel to this, then you are simply wrong and you are morally abhorrent. So if you are pro-Russian in my threads, let it be known that I think that you have a moral black hole in your psychology, and I'm going to be as strong as to say that I couldn't give a monkey's ass what you've got to say about, oh, but look what Ukraine did in the Donbass in 2014, knowing how complex that whole situation was, and think there's some kind of moral equivalent here to indiscriminately bombing cities like this. If you think that there's a moral equivalence there, you've got a problem, and no amount of me telling you this is going to change that for sure. This is going to be water off a duck's back, but just let it be known that those are my very clear feelings. So, and what's interesting here as well is that some of these rockets, ballistic missiles have, unknown ballistic missiles we see a few times. Here's just an example of the thread at the moment and all the destruction that's been caused by these missiles right across Ukraine. And some of the claims have been, is this a military target? No. Okay, is this a legitimate attempt to hit a military target? Are you using the proportionate weapon to try and hit a military target? So even if your excuse is we were trying to hit a military target and it happens to be, I don't know, 600 meters away or something. Okay, if you're trying to hit that and knew that it was near to a residential area, were you using the right weapon to do that? No, in that case, war crime. It is, as far as I'm concerned, that's that. Creative unknown ballistic missile in a field in Kyiv region. Let's look at a couple of claims here. Reuters journalists heard a series of blasts in Kyiv before the air raid siren even sounded, which is highly unusual. No one was reported hurt in Kyiv. They are dead in Dnipro and elsewhere, I think. But missile debris caused the fire in one place and houses were damaged outside of the capital, officials said. Air Force spokesman Yuri Ignat said Russia's missiles had likely been fired along a high looping ballistic trajectory from the north, which would explain why the air raid siren did not sound. I have the feeling they were fired. A whole load were initially fired in the Black Sea. Some were shot down over Ochakiv, over sort of near south of Mykolaiv. So I think yes, there were missiles will have been fired from a number of places. Ukraine is not able to identify and shoot down ballistic missiles, he told the Ukrainska Pravda online outlet, and that's the important thing. I'm going to dwell on that a little bit. I just there's an awful lot of pretty terrible footage of these missiles doing damage to predominantly residential areas. This is not cool, and yeah, I don't, there's not much more to say on that other than air defense did a fairly good job apparently of shooting down some missiles, but it looks like predominantly ballistic missiles have got through. People signal their presence by flashing lights. I mean, this is a civilian disaster there. There is no doubt about that. As a result of Russian missile hitting a residential building in Dnipro, 5 people were killed at the moment, 27 people injured, including 6 children. And I just wanted to show that just a few more bits. Russia hit an infrastructure facility in the Ivano-Frankivsk district. Preliminary, no one's injured. Air defense has shot down 2 missiles. I don't know what that infrastructure facility is. That's kind of a generic term, but that will be what they're going for. It's really gross seeing Ukrainian civilians being attacked. Nobody is bombing Russian apartment buildings, yet every day I see videos of Ukrainian residential areas being bombed. You look at Marnets, you look at Nikopol, it's happening, and Zaporizhia area, it's happening every day, and that's just artillery. It was very obvious who is attacking, who is defending. Today is another sad example that Ukraine needs ATACMS to destroy Russian air bases and other launch sites, which they use for these indiscriminate attacks on civilians. When is enough? Radio Free Europe reported, and this is not from today, but recently, Ukraine does not have an effective means of defense against Iranian-made ballistic missiles. So there's a report that, and so I'm joining the dots here. Are some of these unknown ballistic missile craters and remains, are they from Iranian ballistic missiles that we hear Russia are getting or possibly have already got? And Ukraine does not have an effective means of defense against them, which Russia is likely planning to deploy north of the Ukrainian border, which is what we've just heard. Ukrainian Air Force spokesman Yuri Ignat said, speaking at a briefing on November the 1st, so this is some time back, Ignat said it would be theoretically possible to shoot down Iranian ballistic missiles, but it would be very difficult to do it, quote, with the means that we have in our arsenal today. Since then, they've got some more air defense systems, but again, Patriot aren't in the country yet. They're still, waiting some SAMT, some other NASAMs as well. They need all of that stuff, but again, there will be missiles that get through. There will be missiles that will be harder to detect using those systems, but it would be very difficult to do it with those means. The Washington Post reported last month that Iran had agreed to supply Russia with surface-to-surface missiles, citing sources in the US security agencies. That is that. Actually, I'm going to go to this. What I was going to end with, I'm going to go to this what I was going to end with this, but now I think it's relevant because I'm kind of in that mood where I think, it's not good enough. So I had someone call me out. A couple of people call me out on the idea that I said that the Swiss neutrality arrangements and the refusal to grant export licenses to other countries wanting to deliver Swiss-made armaments to Ukraine, I called it double standards, and they said, "Well, it's not double standards. You don't know what you're talking about." And actually, I do know what I'm talking about, but I just think it is double standards. Let's give a little bit of context here. So, the Switzerland and the arms exports, neutrality versus solidarity with Ukraine, and this is an op-ed, and this goes back some time. This is actually a German article that was back in 2022. Just a few bits here. So the Swiss government argued that greenlighting such exports would violate Swiss neutrality. Now Berlin and Kiev have again jointly asked for permission to make remaining ammunition stocks, this is for the Gepard ammunition, in Germany available to the UAF. Switzerland has again declined. How did Germany react to Russia's war of aggression? Before February 24th, Germany refused to deliver weapons systems to Ukraine. Berlin also rejected requests of allies for re-export of German equipment to support the UAF. It was only with the Chancellor Scholz's Zeitenwende speech of February 27th that Germany shifted policy. Politically, Switzerland has taken clear-cut positions in response to Russia's aggression. On the 28th of February, Switzerland aligned itself with the EU sanctions against Russia. Switzerland has repeatedly voted against Russia in the UN General Assembly. In turn, Moscow has declared it no longer regards Switzerland as neutral. There's an interesting grey area here, though. Although, where is it? There is neutrality means not supporting any side militarily, not even if it believes one side is in the right. But what's interesting is when you condemn people publicly and vote against them in the UN, and if that leads towards any kind of military action, then you are signaling military support. So if there is, it's difficult, right? And I don't think it is as easy as to say we won't. Yeah, we can say we're not going to support you militarily, Ukraine, but we'll support you in humanitarian ways. I think there's definitely a grey area in between. But I also think that the problem is this, right? If you are going to sell arms, if you're going to have an arms industry at all, I mean, this is the double standards. If you're going to have an arms industry at all, you are saying to whoever you're selling those arms to, it is fine to use these armaments in self-defense. And we wholeheartedly agree with that because we're manufacturing them and selling to you. So we are going to make money out of you self-defending. We're going to make money out of you guys killing people in self-defense, right? But when it comes to a country who is genuinely at war and needing self-defense, and you have voted that they have been wronged, and you have stood publicly behind these guys. So this is from the Swiss themselves. Switzerland condemns Russia's military intervention against Ukraine and urges Russia to immediately cease military aggression and withdraw its troops from Ukrainian territory. So it's been very clear on who it thinks is right and wrong here. You say that, okay, I'm okay with providing another country, like Germany, I'm okay with providing you with military armaments to defend yourself. And that's fine. If you are attacked, you can use our stuff. Okay, Ukraine has been attacked. Yeah, you can't use our stuff because we're neutral. But you're okay in providing stuff for people in the event of a war. But when a war actually comes, you're like, no, you ain't getting our stuff. But the principles are still there. Self-defense, yep, that's still in place. And actually, you completely disagree with Russia doing the aggression here. And you are wanting Ukraine to survive this war because you've committed yourselves to rebuilding the country. There is something going wrong here. There's some like lack of logic here, and this is a double standard. I'm still positive there are double standards at play. I mean, you can call me out saying there aren't double standards. This is Switzerland's neutrality. I am calling that neutrality an example of double standards. It's like, yeah, we remain neutral, but we're still fine with having an arms industry. But when someone really needs it, yeah, we need to remain neutral. But okay, but what about you're not selling this stuff directly to? In fact, you're not selling stuff directly to Ukraine. Actually, this is Germany providing stuff to Ukraine. This is Spain providing stuff to Ukraine. This is lots of other countries that you are not allowing your military equipment that you've manufactured, you've made money out of. That's done and dusted, but you're not allowing it to be moved on, which is the will of the other country. You can even step by and say, yeah, you can do what you like. It's not us. We are still neutral. That's just a huge problem. I still think it's double standards. For outsiders, Swiss neutrality and its implementation is not always easy to understand. Clearly, it reflects a strongly held position that goes back centuries. It is equally clear that any adjustment is for the Swiss to decide. In line with relevant rules and regulations, in legal terms, there seem to be options to allow for a re-export of the ammunition in question. At the end of the day, this is about making a choice between traditional neutrality and solidarity with Ukraine. And I think that choice is just not quite right, and it's It's weird, and I have a problem with it, as you can tell. And as it goes on here, since the first one, so this is a bit that says neutrality means not supporting any side militarily, not even if it believes one side is in the right. This is a principle enshrined in the Hague Convention, which has been enforced since 1907. But there is also an overriding dilemma for Switzerland with weapons versus its humanitarian tradition. Yeah, but again, weapons versus humanitarian tradition. You are producing weapons, like that ain't humanitarian. You are producing weapons for people to use in self-defense. But you're saying, yeah, but these people who are literally being attacked right now can't use them in self-defense. That's like seeing an old lady being beaten up across the road and saying, "Oh, do you know what? I've got a baseball bat or a taser shop. I've got a taser shop just here. Everyone come in, buy your tasers. Yeah, you can buy a taser. You can buy a taser. Yep, you can buy a taser. That's fine." Someone comes in and says, "Oh, a taser I've just bought off you. There's someone actually being beaten up. There's an old granny being beaten up across the road there. I'm just going to use your taser to tase that aggressor, to tase that thug." No, you can't use that. No, it's for self-defense. It's for you, but you can't use it over there. But yeah, but she might die in a second. Like, this will save her life. No, you can't use it. Yeah, but like, morally, like, you call yourself a humanitarian, right? Morally, this person's like literally getting beaten up. No, you can't use it. And I'm not going to sell these tasers to her directly either right now, because she's literally being beaten up right now, and that shows that I'm not neutral. So I will not. Yeah, but you said you're not neutral because you've condemned that country. I mean, we know what side you're on. You've condemned them. Yeah, but. Oh. So, as it continues, since the First World War, people have been arguing about how a country that professes a humanitarian tradition can maintain an export-orientated arms industry. Bang. That's the issue of double standards I have. But with regard to Ukraine, the Swiss government's current course is clear. No ammunition, but unlimited solidarity. It's just word salad. It's just like, oh, I'm just going to slip out this moral dilemma here by just saying we'll have solidarity, but you can't have our weapons. Someone else comes on, "Can I buy that weapons for $1 million?" Yep, yeah, you can have those weapons. Yeah, can I give them to Ukraine? No, you can't. So you can call me out as much as you like on my videos and say you don't know what you're talking about. I do know what I'm talking about. I think substantiate why I'm wrong if you think I don't. I just think this whole idea of neutrality is just problematic. I think if you're going to have an export arms industry, neutrality is a problem. There you go. That's a double standard. Right. I'm feeling ranty. Okay, now on to something else. So, Russia says that repairs have been completed on the Crimea Bridge and cars can now freely travel again. It's not clear if all work is finished and if the Kerch Bridge can withstand heavy military vehicles. This is important for Russia. The Kerch Bridge connects the Russian mainland to Crimea and allows supplies to be delivered to both Crimea and the Kherson Oblast, and indeed the Zaporizhia Oblast, through this route. Now, the Kerch Bridge being taken out has meant that supplies have had to come through Ukraine along rail, through roads. In fact, they have been sending road traffic all the way around the side of the Sea of Azov there. And that's really inefficient, logistical nightmare. Also, these railway lines are subject to hits from the Ukrainians here, so they desperately need the Kerch Bridge. It's so super important, and this is another reason why people are calling out for longer range missiles to allow Ukraine to just continue to take out that bridge. You take out that bridge and do a counteroffensive down here, and this whole occupied region is in trouble. It's just in trouble. So that has got to be objective number one. I wonder if Ukraine have an objective that concerns the Kerch Bridge again. Of course, Russia are going to be really tight on their security around this now. They've been hit once, once bitten, twice shy. So I don't know whether it's going to be really difficult for the Kerch Bridge to be taken out again, unless it get, a game-changing piece of ordnance. Just to talk a little bit about Solidar again, and this is I'm not going to show you the video. It is pretty horrible. I hate to share, says Noel reports, but this is also the bitter truth about this war. We're talking about huge Russian losses, but don't forget that that entire generations in Ukraine are also lost. A clip made by Wagner forces shows 50 plus dead Ukrainian servicemen reportedly in Soledar. And these servicemen are all the story of this. The video is that they're all lined up against somewhere and they're all dead. The story from the Wagner is that they refused to put down their arms and were all shot. So you can see that as being really brave and all that kind of stuff. What does this tell us? If it's true, and I say if it's true because apparently they're wearing yellow armbands, and actually the Ukrainians have been using green in that area for some time. So some people are saying, "Oh, this could be propaganda." I don't know. Another interesting tidbit here is that all their boots have been removed. So that again, that shows the poor conditions or the poor equipment that the Wagner troops have, as they've basically stolen the boots of 50 dead bodies. But it just shows that a lot of Ukrainians will have died in Soledar. You can try and paint this as in as positive way as possible, but this will have been really costly for the Ukrainians. It's just that it'll be vastly more costly for the Russians. See Pyrrhus. And the hope is that, you know what, this kind of thing will help get the cogs oiled for NATO and the West to give a whole bunch more equipment to Ukraine. And Britain has started with its sort of semi-formal. I mean, the formal announcement is supposed to be on Monday, but it seems to be done and dusted, giving 12 Challenger 2 tanks, main battle tanks, modern tanks, as good as you're going to get from any nation, really. You know, yeah, we can argue about what's better, the Abrams, the Challenger 2, the Leopard, and all these different tanks, the Leclerc, whatever. Great, throw them in there. 12 isn't going to affect anything, so this needs to be part of a much bigger package. Jack Watlin's just written a pretty interesting piece as a guest piece for The Guardian here that goes into some of the detail. Russia's current unfavourable position is not inevitably indefinite. However, having mobilised 280,000 citizens over the autumn with the potential for further rounds of mobilisation, the Russian military may begin to generate new combat units over time. Moreover, although the dysfunction of the Russian government is currently limiting its industrial output, the state has the raw materials and machining to stabilise its supply problems over that time. The risk, not prediction, is that if Ukraine commits its reserves to a spring offensive and takes heavy casualties, it could become vulnerable later in the year. So this is all about maximizing those gains for the Ukrainians. Maximizing the gains achievable in the spring and limiting the cost of Ukrainian lives for an offensive is key to mitigating that risk. For this task, NATO-designed armoured vehicles such as the Bradleys and Marders already promise alongside potential future deliveries of Leopard 2 main battle tanks would be ideal. Fielded in sufficient numbers, and that's the key, these vehicles would protect the Ukrainian troops from artillery while they advance and help to knock out Russian armour and bunkers. So the provision of NATO armour to support manoeuvres would also help resolve the supply limitations Ukraine's partners are finding in the provision of artillery ammunition. Without armour, the Ukrainian armed forces are likely to be more reliant on artillery and therefore fire more ammunition to advance. This is a super important piece, almost one of the most important parts of this article, is that if we don't give them this armour, then they're going to be using way more artillery to support weakly armoured offensive movement of troops, and therefore will have a problem with ammunition supply. Armour offers Ukrainian troops a prospect of making greater gains firing fewer shells, so on and so forth. It goes on to talk about the individual tanks. But one of the points of him writing this article was to actually say that there needs to be way more investment in like military industrial complex. This is problematic. Like, I've always been against that, but we're in a time of war. The upshot is that Ukraine's international partners are approaching a hard fork in the road. For months, they have gifted equipment they have held in storage. Although these donations have been expressed in dollar terms, few of them have incurred heavy financial costs to donors. This is something I tried to say before when I was talking about the money. It was with Darren Geddes, where I was talking about, we hear this like $8.5 billion of aid to Ukraine. Well, actually, it's not often just that. It's not like, here's $8.5 billion I was going to spend on education, I'm not going to give to Ukraine. It's actually stuff that's already been built, already exists, and you're putting like a financial price tag on that. But actually, in some sense, it's like free. It's not free because I'll explain why. It's like, here's a bunch of stuff we've got in storage, or here's a bunch of stuff we're kind of using, but we're going to give to Ukraine. Okay, there's a cost of getting it there and training these guys up, but actually, all the people that are training are already in the army. We're already paying them. They'll be on desk duty or doing whatever. We're now going to. There will be a cost involved in this, but it's not like the cost you think it is from these headline numbers. Now, the cost then comes in replacing that. It's like, then it's the investment for, okay, we've given a bunch of this stuff. So for nations like the UK, where we don't have the stockpiles of America, we give 12 Challenger tanks away. Actually, we need to be investing in replacing that. It isn't just like giving them the stuff we've already got and we'll just have 12 fewer tanks. We could do that, I guess. But just beware of when you hear these headline numbers, particularly in America, where it's X billion dollars that we've given. Actually, it won't necessarily be that. And also some of that money will be stimulus money, which is like stimulating the economy in like building and so on and so forth. So, yeah. As donations begin to push the critical fleets and stockpiles, however, Ukraine's partners face the need to invest in regenerating their capabilities as well as supporting Ukraine. In a challenging financial environment, they've tried to defer this decision, but if they want a Ukrainian victory, then they can defer it no longer. To defer investment is to offer Russia an opportunity to protract the war. Absolutely. I've been banging on possibly too long. The gap. The last thing I'm going to talk about is a gap in military capabilities between the Russian and Ukrainian armies is gradually decreasing due to Russia's heavy losses, and because Ukraine maintains or even strengthens its power. Thanks to the military aid and the captured Russian equipment, says the Euromaidan press. Some really interesting infographics here talking about what the Ukrainians have and what the Russians have in terms of equipment and troops. So 250,000 to 300,000 troops. Russia has 250,000 to 400,000. So that's broadly a parity there. That wasn't originally. So when we look at the troops originally, there was a balance in soldiers of about negative 1.5, right? So that means that the Russians had a bunch more troops than the Ukrainians at the beginning of the war, and now there's been loads of mobilizations. There is a little bit of a difference, but in terms of orders of magnitude or whatever, or multiplication of those numbers, it's pretty much more of a parity. And if we look at the tanks, the balance was Russia had 4 times as many tanks. Now they have 1.5 times as many tanks. Both because Ukraine has gained some in capturing a bunch of the Russians. It's a zero-sum game. So sometimes, as the Russians lose them, if they're captured, then they're gained by the Ukrainians. It's not just that they've lost them; it's that the Ukrainians have gained them as well. So you get that going on. You get tanks destroyed and abandoned, and so on and so forth. And then you get Ukraine being given a bunch of tanks from abroad. That's not happening with the Russians. They're having to get their own tanks out of being mothballed and whatever. The difference being that the number of tanks has gone down for the Russians, number of tanks has gone up for the Ukrainians, and that means we've gone from a 4 times balance to a 1.5 times balance. So all across the board, we are seeing these changes. Armored vehicles, Russia had 7 times as many. Now they have 3.5 times as many. So that is got twice as good for the Ukrainians as it was. 3 times as many artillery systems, broadly still about 3 times as many. Both sides have lost quite a lot of artillery, and that's why the West is trying to give a whole bunch of artillery as well to the Ukrainians. That is still kind of an area that needs a lot of attention. And then there's a really good analysis of the troops, the soldiers that they have, that they've lost, where they come from. So the analysis of the Russian soldiers in terms of how many are mobilized, how many are your contract army, how many are your Wagners, and how many are the LDR or the LNR or DNR. So the kind of militias from the occupied regions or the annexed regions. Really good analysis. Check it out. Euromaidan on Twitter, or you can go to the Euromaidan website. They will have this somewhere. It's this one and the balance of power here, which shows you the same sort of data in different ways. Also an explanation of what these different pieces of equipment are. So the systems of Volify and MLRS, there's a big difference there. So 1,300 active for the Russians, 200 active for the, or around 200 for the Ukrainians, and around 1,300 for the Russians. So, big difference in the capacity there of multiple launch rocket systems. And again, the long range rocket systems and missiles and drones, Russia has a huge advantage there in terms of what they have compared to the Ukrainians. They got the Tochka U, but they've kind of pretty much shot all of those off. Anyway, yeah, just good information there. Sorry, I ranted so much early at the beginning, but there it goes. It is what it is. It's what I believe. I am pro-Ukrainian, but I am super interested in accuracy. And my last thing I'm going to say is, isn't it funny over the last few days? I mean, first of all, it's interesting that my channel hasn't got any more popular. Maybe there are more regular watchers, but it's broadly stayed the same. But I'm getting a lot more bots, a lot more Russian attention. I don't know why that might be, but that's the way it is. And with that, I get a lot of criticism, which is pretty part of the course. I know I shouldn't waste time on this, but here's a false map, says Paul Paisley, and he was called Paul from Paisley. I called him out. It's like, you're not from Paisley. You're not Paul. You're a bot from Russia. Russia from the GB, and he actually uses language that's, he can't get words right, so he's definitely not Paul Paisley. Anyway, here's a false map. This is hilarious because the mapping I did for this video, and in fact the last couple of days, has been predominantly Russian mapping because they have the most information about what's going on in Solidar. So here's someone that comes on to the video, probably doesn't watch the video, and just says, false maps, you're just a Ukro-Nazi, this is just Ukrainian propaganda. It's like, dude, I've used Russian mapping. So anyway, I just find that quite funny. There's a couple of comments that are actually pertinent to what I've just been talking about. So the first thing is this: Simon Bloom, I'm Swiss. Okay, brilliant. And this is great. So new contracts for the ammo manufacturers to Europe are lowered pretty much to zero in no time, as a manufacturing friend told me. The reason you already explained in the video. There's a discussion going on about the definition of neutrality, but the discussion will last longer than the war in Ukraine, I guess. So this is where I'm at. I'm at that kind of discussion. I think there's double standards and it's problematic. However, he goes on to say, as an insight in neutrality philosophically, imagine there is a war and no one goes to war. Doesn't help, but the important question is how to shape the future of humanity as a planet. Geopolitics, and as a result of war, doesn't help, and it's like a loose cannon in the big picture. Don't get me wrong, I watch every video from you and I love them. Oh, thank you. Neutrality is a way to express a nature of stability with a clear meaning as no threat. So I know that's English is not his first language. There's a bit of confusion going on there, but I guess it's like, right, forget that the wars are happening now. How do we want the future to look? And can we build arms that would give a stable future going forward that these countries can use to defend themselves when it comes to war, but we don't want it to come to war. And we're going to try and make a world where it doesn't come to war, but hopefully some of these weapons might act as deterrents, although, ammunition for a Gepard isn't a deterrent, right? And export licenses won't be deterrents either, so I don't think that argument will work very well. But it's kind of like there's this kind of idea of neutrality that is looking forward looking, but I still struggle. I'm not sold. But thank you so much for that comment, and please, come back at me if you disagree and how you disagree. The other one that I wanted to speak to you about is to do with the explanation for why the Russians might be in Ukrainian uniform. So there's another plausible explanation for Russians wearing Ukrainian uniforms. A captured Mobic was interviewed about this, and he said that because the mobilized have to supply their own kit, they buy uniforms in the marketplaces, so black market or whatever, and simply may not know what Ukrainian patterns look like. The uniform he was wearing even had tags that it was made in Russia. So this is the one particular person in another video, rather than the one other examples where we've had whole loads of sort of dead Russian soldiers in Ukrainian uniforms. Varying levels of psyops here. Are Ukrainian uniforms being exported to Russia and retagged, or did the Russian ministry order some fake uniforms to be made, some of which found their way into the black market via corruption, etc., etc.? So there could be alternate explanations. It could be it could be on purpose. The Russians have on purpose worn Ukrainian uniforms for perfidy to try and deceive the Ukrainians. B, they're buying on the black market. They don't really know what uniform it is. It's just uniform to wear. They just mobilize guys. He used to be a salesman. He used to be a car mechanic. They're fighting. They need to provide their own uniform because the Russian government doesn't do it. So they get hold of some Ukrainian ones, which have been pulled off dead people and then sold on. Or C, is it same sort of thing? Mobilize. They just come across dead Ukrainians, and it's like I'm going to take it off them and wear it myself because my stuff is crap. So, but even before, it's like I'm already here. I've got crap uniform. I'm going to take this uniform. So, any of those could or all of those could be explanations as to why Russians are ending up in Ukrainian uniform. Anyway, thank you so much. Please like, subscribe, and share. I really appreciate all the support that you give my channel. Take care, and I will speak to you tomorrow.